Officer Pantaleo was not engaged in a chokehold on Mr. Garner when he said he could not breathe.
Is U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue essentially announcing that the Department of Justice will not pursue charges against the cop who put Eric Garner in a chokehold back in 2014 that led to the death of Garner, an individual who had actually called the cops to report an altercation, and then the cops turned their attention on him, put him in a chokehold, and he died. They later accused him of attempting to sell loose cigarettes. That was something that he had done previously. There was no indication that he was doing that at that moment. And even so, does that give anyone the right to put any other individual in a chokehold? Now, authorities say that there just wasn't enough evidence to charge him, right? I want to remind you guys of what it looked like when Eric Garner was put in a chokehold and what later resulted in him dying.
I'm minding my business. Please just leave me alone. I told you the last time. Please just leave me alone. Please don't touch me. Don't touch me. Hold on. Don't touch me, please. Came over. Not touch me. Damn. All right, stop. Give us your hands, buddy. Put your hand behind your back. I can't breathe.
The DOJ says that they do not have enough evidence to charge Daniel Pantaleo. That was the cop who put him in a chokehold. Now, he denies that he put him in a chokehold, even though you can clearly see it in the video there. And to be clear, there is an NYPD policy against placing individuals in chokeholds. Chokeholds are banned under police policy. Pantaleo maintained he used a legal takedown maneuver called the seatbelt.
Also known as a chokehold.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
No, if there's more facts, but I can jump right into this.
Well, I actually want to go to a longer clip of the US attorney detailing why they've decided against charging the cop in this case, and then I want to hear your thoughts. Take a look.
The evidence here does not support charging police officer Daniel Pantaleo or any other officer with a federal criminal civil rights violation. During the department's investigation, we focused primarily on two of these elements. First, whether the force used was objectively unreasonable under the circumstances. And second, whether the officer acted willfully in violation of the law. Even if the government can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the force used was objectively unreasonable, the government must also prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the officer acted willfully. This is the highest standard of intent imposed by law. An officer's mistake, fear, misperception, or even poor judgment does not constitute willful conduct.
So, Attorney General William Barr seemed pretty happy to announce that there wouldn't be any charges, but I mean, it's devastating and it's wrong and it's unjust, but at the same time, is anyone surprised? And what happened to justice? What happened to swift justice? This happened in 2014, and we're now hearing about their decision in this case. And it's the wrong decision, but go ahead, Jayar.
So you were talking about him, I'll let you to the point about him being appointed, but it was Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions, of course.
So Donahue was going through the reasons why, or at least the high standard that they have to do at least to press charges on this police officer for his actions. And you could tell he was setting it up with, these are the high actions we have to go through, the high standards we have to meet in order to do anything about it, because other parts that were cut off is like, cops have we don't have the 20/20 hindsight to see what they're gonna do. It's an escalated situation. All these things have to be considered. So when you're talking about the death of someone, we're gonna talk about the perilous situation that the police officers are in, cool. We're not gonna talk about the perilous situation that the victim was in. We're not gonna talk about the reason that they even started harassing him. We're not gonna talk about how long he was talking to them and tried to tell them what was happening. We're not gonna talk about the witnesses that said, hey, he was breaking up a fight. We're not gonna talk about any of that. We're just gonna say, hey, it was tough for him to do that. So whatever he did, we're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt from the beginning. So 75% of the way, he's already been let off the hook. We've decided, not presumed innocent until proven guilty. Not that whole standard. It's no. We've hit the gavel. We're halfway down.
They've adjudicated it unilaterally. Yeah.
There's a difference between innocent until proven guilty and innocent and there's no way he's gonna be guilty.
This is why, look, while I think it's important to have body cameras, this is why I don't think that body cameras will really solve the problem. I mean, we have video. We see what happened with our own eyes and it didn't matter. And let's say we give the cops the benefit of the doubt, right? And we actually believe that he was selling untaxed loose cigarettes on the street. I mean, that's the best that they have, right? That was the best that we got in terms of a defense or a response from the cops in this story. So you think that it's justified to place anyone in a chokehold over that?
You know, my initial thought was, ta-da, nobody's surprised. Since that murder, there have been countless murders as they become normalized and we get accustomed to seeing black men being assassinated by some of these race soldiers, and I'm going to go that deep and that far. But what I'm going to say is, and take this opportunity, is when you see When They See Us, when you see The Wire, and what I've been trying to talk about over and over again is that this is a system that it trickles from the top all the way down. You see this man sitting here with his straight face saying that that this was followed to the letter of the law. So instead of saying what I've said over and over again, I'm just going to say this. I'm looking in the camera and I'm just telling people of color, all of you, every single one of us that continue to divide ourselves over who's an immigrant, who's Latin, we need to mobilize. We need to use our power of votes. We need to get rid of these people who are in office who enable these systems that continue to oppress us. And we need to stop thinking that marching and crying and blogging is going to make a difference, because at this point, that's why that man was scared when those police officers approached him. Black men in particular have PTSD when it comes to the police. They're afraid, from jump, they're scared. Philando Castile, he told you he had a gun and he still got assassinated. We watched the Sandra Bland video from her point of view. Boom, she's gone. And we have to accept this. It's being normalized and we keep having the same conversations again. Start using your votes and your dollars for the people who want to preserve your community and your humanity.
We do need people to get active politically.
Oh, absolutely.
It goes beyond talking about it, tweeting about it. We need action.
Absolutely.
And later in the show, I'm gonna give you an example of how action works. Even if it's a small group of people who are speaking truth to power, it does work. You just have to get out there and do more than complain about things behind a keyboard or behind a computer screen. So I want to give you a few more facts about the story before we move on. The city medical examiner actually ruled that the death was a homicide in the days after Garner's death. And the medical examiner testified that Pantaleo's alleged chokehold caused an asthma attack and was, quote, part of the lethal cascade of events. What I thought was interesting was just how disgusting the defense attorney was in this case, because the defense attorney responded to that by saying, well, he was obese. So let me give you his exact statement. His name is Stuart London. He was the defense attorney, and he says, Mr. Garner died from being morbidly obese and having other health issues. He was a ticking time bomb and set these facts in motion by resisting arrest. Let me ask you something. If you are breaking up a fight and the police show up and they decide that they're gonna direct their attention to you, the person who was trying to break up the fight, wouldn't you be upset?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you wonder why the cops are focusing on you at that moment? So when they say that he was resisting arrest, he was asking questions. He was like, what did I do? And you heard him in that video, leave me alone, I'm not doing anything. But it doesn't matter, being a good Samaritan, if you look a certain way, doesn't matter to certain cops. And that was clear in the Eric Garner story.
I really just question the consciousness and the humanity of all of the people involved in these wrongdoings. His daughter is dead as a result of all of the stress and all of the stuff that has happened as a result of this injustice. And karma will rain down on people like that. You have children, just because you think you're above the law there are other factors, like, because this cannot just continue to happen, man. We can't just sit by and watch Black and brown people be dehumanized and go backwards in time. It's just become so common. It's becoming normal.
It's definitely normalized now. It's.
Can we hear more what he said? That's the best part.
Okay, sure. So let's go to the next video of U.S. Attorney Donahue.
After Mr. Garner resisted arrest, Officer Pantaleo appeared to attempt 2 approved NYPD tactics, both of which involved the use of force. First, he appeared to attempt an armbar. Officer Pantaleo next appeared to attempt a second approved tactic, this one called the rear takedown or seatbelt. At this point, there is nothing in the video to suggest that Officer Pantaleo intended or attempted to place Mr. Garner in a chokehold. I would also note that there was a significant difference in size and weight between Mr. Garner, who stood 6'2" and weighed close to 400 pounds, and Officer Pantaleo, who was considerably smaller. As Mr. Garner and Officer Pantaleo struggled, Officer Pantaleo held on to Mr. Garner, and both men fell backward. In the process, Officer Pantaleo's body slammed against a store window, causing the window to buckle. It appears that in response to that collision and to maintain a hold on Mr. Garner, Officer Pantaleo wrapped his left arm around Mr. Garner's neck, resulting in what was, in effect, a chokehold. As has been widely reported, Mr. Garner stated, "I can't breathe." But I would point out that he made this statement only after he fell to the sidewalk and after Officer Pantaleo released his grip from Mr. Garner's neck. Significantly, Officer Pantaleo was not engaged in a chokehold on Mr. Garner when he said he could not breathe. And neither Officer Pantaleo nor any other officer applied a chokehold to Mr. Garner after he first said he could not breathe. I want to repeat that last statement because it's very important to the understanding and analysis of this case. Officer Pantaleo was not engaged in a chokehold on Mr. Garner when he said he could not breathe.
That is unbelievable reasoning.
Right.
So what is he trying to imply? That Eric Garner died on his own and it wasn't the result of the chokehold? Yeah, maybe he wasn't able to say I can't breathe when he was in a chokehold.
And he couldn't breathe.
And by the way, they acknowledge
that it was a chokehold.
The cop said, Pantaleo, which sounds like pantalones, and like every time I hear his name, anyway, sorry, unimportant point. But like, he's the one, the cop said, no, I did not put him in a chokehold. You have the US attorney, right, saying it was a chokehold. The NYPD has a policy against placing people in chokeholds. So, by the way, he's still a cop. He's still working for the NYPD. The NYPD has launched their own investigation, and his job is kind of like in threat. Like he's worried that he might lose his job. No, he should be gone. He broke policy. He violated that policy. In the very least, he shouldn't be working as a cop.
The most important thing here is to make sure the rest of the police officers, not even just with the NYPD, but anywhere else, realizes, hey, this is the route you're gonna have for getting off from doing something like this. It wasn't your fault. This huge black guy ran you into a window. Therefore, you had to slip from a rear seat belt to a chokehold A chokehold A to a chokehold B. Then after that, you couldn't let go. And then when he said he couldn't breathe because he maybe got your forearm off his throat. And right when you said it, you know what else was happening? Pantaloon's hand was in his head as he's screaming, "I can't breathe." What about that part? There was a point when he said excessive force is maybe kicking someone in the head. He mentioned that. during the 20 minutes I had to listen to him talk. That happened in effect. So big black guy, 400 pounds, smaller white guy. Oh man, what do you expect? That checks off the list for every time that people see black people as larger than them, therefore more dangerous, therefore a threat to their lives. Check off the list, I can kill him now. And in effect, it was a chokehold. No, it wasn't chokehold, it was in effect. So let's go ahead and give that caveat. Then, let me repeat that 2 more times at the end. No one put more chokeholds on him after he already commenced the murder. I wanna say that again because it's important to my case to defend him. No one did it because once he started saying, I'm dying, then they decided to stop choking him. These are reasons for not charging someone.
And that's on a national platform. Everyone can see it. You can pull up the video. So it's just, it's basically, like we have so much division in this country right now, and so many people are fighting over whether Bernie this and Elizabeth Warren that. We're so divided that this is the administration that supports this, right? Jeff Sessions appointed this man. This is the administration that supports this type of behavior. And while we're arguing about semantics, having dumb arguments on Twitter and distracting ourselves with foolishness, this is the kind of stuff that is happening right in front of our very own eyes, and they're normalizing it. It is becoming, it's just Tuesday. Yeah. And that's not cool.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.